Hello and welcome to Castar Reviews. Today we're looking at the sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic 2 was released in 1992 and was created by the Sega Technical Institute, a division of Sega founded by Mark Cerny. After original creator Yuji Naka had differences with Sega of Japan, he joined Cerny in America while the original Sonic team worked on Sonic CD. Sonic 2 also got a mobile port, which like before is the best version of the game because of graphical fidelity and an improved save feature. Sadly, this port will remain on iOS and Android for the foreseeable future, but it is still a phenomenal version of Sonic 2. Sonic 2 did a lot for the franchise, and set the speed-focused path the franchise has been going down to this day. But what do I think about it? That's what you're here for, right? Without further ado, this is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. The story is certainly a bit more involved this time, but the plot is basically the same. Eggman trapped animals into robots, and Sonic needs to destroy them. But I'm sure you noticed the yellow guy running next to you. His name is Tails, or Miles per hour. You can see for yourself how he got his nickname. Sonic and Tails go through what feels like twice as many zones as the last game and chase after Eggman's helicarrier and Tails' plane. But sadly, Tails gets shot down and you have to go through the flying base all by yourself. After defeating Eggman, he escapes in his rocket to the Death Egg, a giant space station in the sky. When all hope seems lost, Tails comes back to save you, and you hitch a ride on Eggman's rocket to the Death Egg. After defeating Not Metal Sonic and the Death Egg robot, the space station blows up and Sonic falls to the Earth. If you completed all the returning special stages and got all the Chaos Emeralds, Sonic transforms into Super Sonic and flies alongside Tails and ends the game. The credits theme of this game was actually remixed by Akon for Sonic 06's credits theme. I understand that it sounds like I just made that up, but trust me, it is real. So yeah, the story has a bit more going on, and I don't think the game suffers for it. Tails was most likely added so younger siblings can play in co-op or multiplayer, but it's kinda nice to see that he was given story importance. Much like how the story was expanded, the presentation and gameplay did so as well. You can see for yourself. Sonic 2 is a more vibrant looking game with the colors popping a lot more than last time. There weren't too many reused ideas for zones. I can only really think of Metropolis Zone being adjacent to Scrap Brain Zone, Aquatic Ruin being a different take on the Underwater Temple of Labyrinth Zone, and of course Emerald Hill not even being fucking subtle with its ripoff of Green Hill. Even so, the zones feel so different from previously that it doesn't feel like they copied over too many assets from Sonic 1. Another major difference from the last game is the sheer size of the zones. There's so many multiple pathways and different ways to get through an act that it can be confusing for a new player. Aquatic Ruin and Oil Ocean suffer from making Sonic and Tails go in so many different directions with set pieces that it's hard to get your bearings on a level layout without multiple playthroughs. A lot of the later areas like Mystic Cave Zone, Metropolis Zone, and Oil Ocean Zone are chores to get through as a result. Thank God that players don't have to go through 3 acts of this nonsense anymore. Every level except for Metropolis Zone, Sky Chase Zone, and Wing Fortress Zone has 2 acts instead of 3. Sky Chase and Wing Fortress Zone are each 1 act apiece, so I can see that more as a combined area. The level design feels all over the place, and some sections of the level look that way too. Look at this! I can barely tell which area of the loop I'm going to come out of, and there's no way to jump to the other loop. There are areas like this in Chemical Plant Zone as well, where it seems like Sega decided that making the levels look cool was better than making the levels look coherent. Frankly, this is just the start. Levels in Classic Sonic after this have way more pathways than they know what to do with. I'm more of the mind that you should have a straight line to the goal, but if you wanted to go into this one section for a secret, then I'm down. More like 2D Mario or Donkey Kong Country. I don't want to belabor this point, but getting launched in so many different directions that you have no idea whether or not you're going in the right direction, it's just not that fun of a time. Back to the presentation for a sec, the music and sound design is great. One thing that's consistent for the franchise is that no matter how horrendous Sonic games get, the music is always great. Some of my favorite themes are the credits theme, Emerald Hill Zone, Oil Ocean Zone, Chemical Plant Zone, and the boss theme. Every zone has the twang that the Genesis is known for, and it's not as ear-grating as it can be in some other titles. Moving on to the gameplay, and the fundamental gameplay has stayed the same, bar a few added touches. Sonic now has access to the world-famous Spin Dash, so running up slopes to gain momentum is no longer mandatory. This goes hand in hand with Sonic 2's greater focus on speed and de-emphasis of light puzzle solving and platforming. The amount of speed Sonic can get is more exhilarating than before, and the unique set pieces that each zone brings makes the game that much more fun. Although in the later zones, all that speed focus is gone, and once you get to Metropolis Zone and beyond, it feels like you're playing a completely different game. There are so many enemies that seemingly fly out of the fucking floorboards that going fast feels like it's discouraged. This is especially true if you're after the returning Chaos Emeralds. There are 7 of them now, and collecting all 7 grants access to Super Sonic. Super Sonic is great. He's completely invincible and travels much faster, and makes boss fights a joke, although he can still fall down pits, get crushed, and drown. While I enjoy playing as Super Sonic, I didn't even want to use him in the late game. because his speed makes the controls slippery and I didn't want to deal with that shit with tight platforming like this. Like before, the Chaos Emeralds are where my problems with Sonic 2 start. Thankfully, the special stages are different, but somehow Sega made them worse than before. Sonic travels in this half-pipe structure along with Tails if he chose to play as both. They have to collect a certain amount of rings before reaching a checkpoint. After 3 checkpoints, the emerald is yours. There are bombs in the way that make you lose 10 rings if you get hit by them, and a lot of success in these levels comes from straight memorization. My problem with the special stages is that they're infuriating. The later stages require precise bomb dodging, but Tails always moves a few frames after you do, so you have to move a second before you think you have to avoid losing unnecessary rings. Also, some stages only have just a little bit more than the required amount of rings to reach the next gate, which can sometimes demand perfection from you and your sidekick. But the kicker is that if you fail at any checkpoint, you're booted out without the ability to immediately try again. Thankfully, trying again isn't as limited as before, with level checkpoints and 50 rings holding the key to special stages as opposed to level exit. Regardless of how often you can play them, these special stages will never be fun, and will always feel like a chore to get Supersonic and the best ending. Even still, with the returning absence of a save feature, once you finish the game or turn off the console, you have to get all the emeralds all over again. Thankfully, the 360 and PS3 ports have the same sort of save feature as before, but you still can't go back to older levels as Supersonic, and when you start a new game, you've got to go through the same process again. Going back to the topic of no save feature, I feel like it hurts this game even more than Sonic 1. Sonic 2 is a long game, with later zones being harder than the later zones of the last game. Plus, with the fact that you have to fight the final bosses without rings, I would not be shocked if you get discouraged after getting a game over late in the game. That's why I'm once again recommending that you find a version with a save feature. It will save you a lot of headache. The difficulty isn't all over the place as before, there is a solid difficulty curve. But still, the lack of the save feature and limited continues put a little HGH in that difficulty curve. If I knew that I was one bullshit encounter away from playing the game all over again, I probably would be discouraged from turning on the game again. That's accentuated in the final boss fights. You have to fight Silver Sonic and the Death Egg robot with no rings, which seems counterintuitive. The entire game teaches you that rings will be your safety net if shit gets fucky, but now you have to beat the 2 relatively hard bosses without taking a single hit. Not to mention the fact that the Death Egg robot has an asinine glitch that prevents Sonic from bouncing off of him like usual after taking a hit. This almost certainly leads to death and having to start back at Silver Sonic. It's not fun and leaves a bad taste in your mouth at the end of what was a really fun game up until the ending. Going back to the game as a whole, I really do enjoy it for what it is. It's exhilarating and it mostly improves on Sonic 1's flaws. The zones look a lot better, and when the level design doesn't evoke the spirit of MC Escher, it's an enjoyable platformer. I prefer Sonic 1's level design, and I honestly wish that I can play Sonic 1 with the same physics engine as Sonic 2. Much like the first game, I would not necessarily recommend going for the Chaos Emeralds because the process of doing so will most likely leave a bad impression about the game as a whole. Even though you get more for grinding through the special stages, the fact that you have to do it every time you boot up the game again is a deal breaker for me. Sonic 2 is flawed, but the fact remains that it does improve on some of the things that Sonic 1 brought to the table. If anything, I'd rather play Sonic 1 over Sonic 2, but I'd still highly recommend playing the mobile versions of both games for the best experience. Next time we'll be looking at Sonic CD, whose mobile version was actually ported to consoles. Sonic CD was developed in Japan concurrently with Sonic 2 and is one of the only good games for the expensive Genesis add-on. Thank you for watching this episode of Castar Reviews, subscribe for more content from me and stay safe. See you next time for Sonic CD.